Today we're making the first block in the grandmother's garden quilt, the early spring crocus. Well, I'm enjoying the original newspaper pattern for the crocus, clipped from the Salt Lake Tribune in 1928. Now, this fictitious story was published with the pattern, and it's about the ladies that got together every Tuesday to make the blocks. Now, remember, the group was led by Nancy Page. Oh, the stories sound like the ladies had so much fun together, even if they were just made up. Well, this is how my sister Pat and I made grandmother's garden quilt. It's a whole new fresh look from these 70-year-old patterns. Our crocus block is very similar to the one that the ladies made with Nancy Page. Now, you can make the crocus very flat, or you can just add a little dimension by stuffing the petals. Now, the yellow French knots represent the stigmas. Marjorie, one of the fictitious ladies from the club, brought up how saffron comes from the crocus stigma. She said she had saffron cakes and bread in England at Easter time. This is what the threads of saffron look like. Can you imagine? It takes 4,000 stigmas to make just 1 ounce of saffron. Must be the most expensive spice in the world. Well, saffron bread sounded so good, I had to bake some, but I used my bread machine. In the Middle Ages, it was sometimes used instead of real gold leaf, and they also dyed linen with saffron and claimed that it added health value, whatever that means. So I tried dyeing fabric too, and it made this most beautiful yellow. Ooh, I just love it. I just took the saffron and put it in boiling water, and this is the color that it came out. Oh, almost looks like buttercup, doesn't it? It's beautiful. Henry VIII said it was more sanitary and needed less laundering than white material. I have some beautiful purple fabrics to use for my crocus, so let's get to sewing. Crocus flower about Valentine's Day, just to remind us that winter is nearly over. Now, this is what the crocus looked like in my Pennsylvania home when they just popped their heads out of the ground, and it never failed. They'd pop their heads out of the ground and it would snow the next day. Oh, you'd feel so bad for them. You'd want to bring them a quilt. Well, let's take a look at the fabric crocus, because there are 3 different leaves in the crocus, and this particular leaf is a pieced leaf. There's 2 stems, and then there's 2 beautiful purple flowers. We're using 3 shades of the purple. We're using the light, the medium, and the dark. So let's start with the green. Now, you want to have different shades of green, so it's interesting. I have the perfect piece of fabric for you because it goes from light to medium to dark, just in one piece. Now, this is a 1/2 yard piece, and we want to get pieces out of this, strips for the pieced leaves and also for the bias stem. So let's just cut it in half. I'll put this one aside. Now, for the pieced leaves, go ahead and take and turn it so that you have the salvages lined up on the left end. Get it on the grid. Ooh, it's looking good. So right here on the left end, use your 6 by 24 and just trim off that salvage edge. Get rid of it. Now, cut this into 2-inch wide strips. You need to have a total of 40 running inches. You want to have enough prepared ahead of time so that as you go through that quilt, you are ready. So just go ahead, cut 2-inch strips, and then once they're all cut, you're just going to take these, put them right sides together, sew them with a 1/4-inch strip, and you will be ready. Put them in a plastic bag so that they look something like this, sewed and ready. Okay, so let's just take these. I'll just get rid of those for the time, but let's go to the second half. Now, this is for the bias. You want to go ahead and cut them. Cut this 1/2 yard piece into 2 9-inch pieces. So I'm just going to use my grid right here. Cut them in half So I have 9-inch strips, and I have mediums and darks right in this piece. So take it and turn it, because the first thing we want to do is find the 45-degree line on the ruler. Ooh, it's complicated. Just turn that ruler around and then line up the 45 on the left end. Cut it. This piece you can use for leaves. That'll work. But let's use that bias cut right here and line up the 2 1/4 inch line on your ruler right with the edge of that bias piece, and just cut the whole way across. And then take these bias cuts, put them in a plastic bag, and as we go through that beautiful grandmother's garden quilt, then you'll have all of your bias strips ready for sewing. All right, and we'll just get this off the table too. Now the flower comes from these patterns right here. Well, let's look at this. I found the original patterns along with the newspaper clippings. The quilt maker actually took an envelope and she cut out every template. I cannot believe this. She's got it all lined and ready to go, and what she was going to do was just trace these on fabric and then do the needle turn method. Well, thank heavens we do not have to do needle turn. That would be amazing if I did needle turn. Well, what I'm using is something called fusible interfacing. Now this is light to medium weight, non-woven fusible interfacing. And when you feel that it has a smooth side to it and that it also has a dotted fusible side. And this is what we're going to use for the magic of applique. Oh, there's no A in this applique. Now these are the patterns for the crocus. I have a permanent marking pen. And all I'm going to do is just put this fusible interfacing. Oh, now you're going to see how steady my hand is. This is the smooth side of the fusible interfacing. And all you do is take this permanent marking pen, hold it down, ooh, and carefully draw around each one of those pieces. Ooh, did I have too much coffee this morning? Hard to tell. But once you get each one of these pieces traced, then all you do is just go back and cut around each one of the pieces. You rough cut. You don't want to cut up close, but you rough cut, and then you pair it up with a piece of fabric. Okay, this is the leaf, smooth side up. This is the fabric, right side up. You just place it right on top like this. Well, I did some of my pieces. Oh my gosh, am I ready? Spring is coming. We've got to get this done. Okay, so I took each one of the pieces. This is the left petal for the crocus, the right petal, and then right here, this is what the center looks like. But you take each one of the pieces and you pair it up with the fabric. Oh, looking good. So let me just shift these out of here. Now this piece right here, I already did. This is our pieced leaf. And there's the dash line going right down through the middle, lined up with that seam. So let me show you how I sewed it. Okay, take and put a pin right in the middle of this, and you want to use a very tight stitch. So I'm going to use the center needle position, but 1.8 stitch length. That's a tight stitch. 1.8, just a straight stitch, and this is the best thing. Because we're sewing on the fusible interfacing, you want to make sure that you can manipulate the piece under the needle. So I like to go ahead and take and lighten the tension on the presser foot. So it starts out originally at 3, that's normal, and I'm just going to lighten it down to 1. So now, whenever I have my material underneath my presser foot, I could just manipulate it easily. All right, I'm ready to sew. Okay, put it right underneath the foot, and if you have needle down position, oh, this is the time to use it. Needle down, and all I'm going to do is sew with that tight stitch, that 18 to the 20 stitches to the inch on the inside edge of the line. And then right here, as you get into the curves, into the points, you just raise your presser foot, swing it around underneath, and keep on turning. Now I'm using a foot that is a combination of metal and plastic. It's actually the best to use a metal foot, but this particular one is metal on the bottom and plastic on the top, so I have good visibility. And believe me, with my eyes, you want to have good visibility. So I'm just coming back right to where I started and overlap those stitches. Needle up, take it out. That's it. No needle turn here. Now, you need to have a very sharp pair of 4-inch scissors, and these are the best, real sharp. And all you want to do is take and trim out 1/8 inch away. Now, so that we don't have to go back and do all that little notching, I'm going 1/8 inch away, and this is actually the smooth side of the facing. Ooh, I'm coming back to where I started. This is one of the 3 leaves. Right here is where I overlap. So just take this, get rid of it, don't need that anymore. Now with the sharp scissors, take and make a little nick right in just the inner facing, just a small hole right there. Now, the most important tools are coming up. Right now, you need to have a drinking straw, just a drinking straw from your favorite fast food restaurant. Now, it's important, however, that it's a very large one. You need to have a fat one, and you can just take it, cut it in half. It needs to be fat, and this is the best part. It's free. You need to have a fat-free straw for your work. The second tool is a bodkin, and it has to have a ball in the end. It's called a ballpoint bodkin. Now, this is the greatest. Just take your drinking straw, your large fat-free straw, stick it right out to the tip like this, and turn the fabric so that it is on the end of the straw. And then just rest the straw on the table. Take the ball point on the bodkin. We have to turn this right side out. So you just start pushing it right into the straw. It doesn't have to go the whole way. Turned halfway. Ta-da! You can make it dance. And then take your straw, got it halfway turned, stick it in the second half, turn the fabric so that it's right in the end. Just push with the bodkin into the straw and pop it out. Now, with the ball point on the inside, run it around the outside edge so you can push out those curves. And then once you have that done, I like to use another tool. Now this is a stiletto, and this is the best because you want to go right into this point here and just pull it. Pull it out so you have those crisp points. Now because the inner facing is on the bottom, you don't want to take it to the iron just yet. So get a tool called a wooden iron. Gosh, all kinds of things. And you just press from the fabric out to the outside. And you want to roll the fabric over that fusible interfacing so you don't see it from the right side. One more step. You want to stuff it. You want to have dimension in those pieces. So just take a piece of cotton batting, and it needs to be cotton because we are going to press it in the next step. Cotton will maintain its shape. It won't flatten and melt like your polyester. So I use this pattern as the size of the piece. You just use the piece as the size of the pattern, trim that exactly the same size, and then take a pair of hemostats or surgical scissors. Boy, this is the best thing for stuffing. Just take hold of the tip of the cotton batting and just open that hole. And all you do is just slip that cotton batting right up to the tip, release your surgical scissors, take that second part, pull it right into the second part of the leaf. Oh my gosh, this is just moving right along. Now, move it around in the inside until it's smooth and ready for pressing. Now, I want to just take my 2 other leaves and trim them. And while I trim them, I'm going to tell you a little story. I want to tell you about the noble youth by the name of Crocus. Oh, he was noble and he was rich, and wouldn't you know it, he fell in love with the shepherdess called Smilac. Well, according to Greek law, he was not allowed to wed Smilac. So in his grief, he killed himself. Boy, this is a sad story, isn't it? He killed himself. Well, the goddess Flora took pity on them, and she turned them both into flowers. So now we have Crocus, the beautiful purple flower, and we have Smilac, the clinging vine. There's a good end to the story because they lived happily ever after. Oh, that's a good story. Okay, so now I'm doing the pieced leaf right here, and you can see how quickly you get at this technique. Gosh, I just sit down and sew my pieces before my favorite TV show, and then you can just take your tools, all of the tools that I just showed you, take them right to your TV with a little table, and you can get them all ready. This one needs to have it poked out just a bit. Pull it from the outside with your stiletto, give it a crisp point and just give it a little pressing, and I think that we'll just skip the stuffing on this one because I want to show you how to fuse these in place. Now there's stuffing inside, there's the interfacing on the back side, so I have my handle piece right here along with my placement sheet. This is so you know exactly where you want to put your pieces. So I just want to place it like this, line up the handle together. I'm going to take my one leaf, place it right along here, and then I do have the second one. I'll just put it right there like that, slip the placement sheet out from under it, and then you need to use steam. Just give it a good amount of steam. Oh, and that is steam. And then once you have pressed on one side, turn it over the other side and give another pressing. Now before I leave this, I want to just go ahead and place this back on top and trace those stems. Let's see if I can get that lined up like that. And we'll just trace those stems. And that's going to go right along that leaf. Boy, that is hard to see, but at least I get the idea. So now I want to just take this bias stem that I pressed earlier, and I'll show you how to just sew it down. Okay, let me pull some of these tools out of the way. Okay, there they are, fused in place. And let's just do a little practice right now. Let's just go ahead and see how to sew this outside edge down. I like to use a stitch called number 12. So I'm just going to hit number 12 on here. And when you take that stitch, I'm going to just use the preset. And this is what the stitch looks like. And it's just a very large blanket stitch, and it's taken a very wide bite. So I'm just going to continuously reduce my bite so that when I sew on the background, it takes a little narrow bite over. I'm going to reduce the background stitch too. So I'm just playing with red thread so I could show you a good stitch on how to sew this down. So when you look, this is the original. Now this one right along here looks good. Now, so it looks like invisible hand stitching. I'm going to use invisible thread when I really do this, but right now I'm just going to go around it with the red thread so you can see. So let me pull this out, get rid of that, take this leaf that I did. I like the way it's all set up, and you make the straight stitch go on the background and then the bite go into the leaf. Now if you really would like, you could use a blanket stitch as well. Some of the original quilts used a blanket stitch going right into the tip right up here. Use needle down. Now I see just a little bit of interfacing showing right here. So you can go ahead and avoid that as you go around the corner. Then take your stiletto and curl that under and hold it while you stitch over it. Oh, I have a little dampness on my background fabric. That'll dry up. All right. So if this were invisible, you wouldn't ever see it. You just wouldn't even notice it would be gone. So you go around all of your flowers, all of your leaves with exactly that same stitch. Now, how about the stems? I'm going to change to a 1/4 inch foot. Easiest one to do. Needle up. Just pop off this foot right here because you sew the stems with a 1/4 inch seam. Just line that up underneath the needle bar. Let's see if I get lucky and just pop that foot right in place. Line it up. All right. One more. There we go. All right. Here is the line right here for my stem, and you can barely see it. So let me just see if I can draw it a little bit longer. But you take and fold your bias in half, wrong sides together, and you always place the raw edges of the bias strip against the inside curve. And so this is exactly where it's going to be. I want to go right along here like this. So place the raw edges on the inside curve. Use that 1/4 inch stitch. And this time, I'm going to just, oh, how about I change my stitch? Better have a straight stitch, much better. Okay, so now just curve that around and sew that right on top. It's going right up here. Good. Now let's take a look and see. So trim off the top of that bias right here. And this part now gets folded over, the stem right on top of the leaf. And then a blind hem stitch or a blanket stitch will just finish this folded edge of the bias stem. Well, I'm going to go back, sew together my flowers, I'll put it in place, and I'll show you how to finish the crocus. I have my 3 leaves and my 2 stems in place. Now before you go on much further, before you put all the bulk of the flowers in place, you want to sew your 2 pieces together and square them up. So this is what I did. I placed my pieced basket right sides together to my handle piece, and you actually want to match up the outside edges because they're pretty much the same size. And then use a 1/4 inch seam as you sew across that top edge. Now, when you open it up, oh, let's do a check, because right here, you want to have that 1/4 inch seam right up to the handle piece. Now, you need to square it to 12.5 inches or whatever is a good average size for you. Maybe it's just 12 1/4. So take your 12.5 inch square up ruler, and there are a number of points that you need to check. Right now, I have the 1/4 inch seam lined up. There's a 1/4 inch line on the ruler, and that is right on the tip of that foot. Over here, same thing, 1/4 inch right on the tip of that foot, that seam allowance. And then up on this part of the ruler, you want to make sure that the tip of the ruler is lined up right with the seam. This side and also over on the opposite side. Oh, it's looking good. So hold it flat. Boy, you don't want it to shift right now. Now, you can use just a 12.25 inch size if that's better for you, but I'm going to square mine all to 12.5. Now, I need to take this, turn it around, and place the ruler exactly again. And this will be to the size of the ruler, 12.5 inches. Line up here, 2 more sides, trim it, and over. You want to do that before you put all of that flower in there because it gets quite bulky, but I do have my crocus ready. Now, I'm going to just use my placement sheet as I did before and just place this piece right on top. Now, it gets a little tricky because there was just this little guy right here. This was the A piece, and this is the center for both of the crocus. So if you take, there's a dashed line on the back side, cut this in half. Well, it's actually not in half, but you're just cutting off a little tip. Now this little tip is going to be for the inside of the crocus on the right. This part right here is going to be the inside part for the crocus on the left. And then just take these pieces, and they're fatter up at the top. They're wider up at the top. Now this one, because it just has that little bit of tip in there, it's going to have to be practically closed. It knows the snow is coming, so it's not going to be open big at all. And you just overlap them right there like that. And this side piece can be a little bit more open. Let's see if we can get it positioned right on the end of the stem. Like that. Meet those little pieces right in the bottom. Ah, it's looking good. Plan the position just like you want. And then take the steam on your iron. Push it down. Lots of steam on the right side. And once you have it on the right side, turn it over to the wrong side. Now, all I need to do with this is sew in my French knots. To make the stigma from French knots, thread your crewel needle with yellow pearl cotton number 3. Bring the needle up from behind and then wrap the pearl cotton 2 or 3 times around the needle and insert it back right beside where you brought it up. And then connect the French knots to the crocus with a back stitch. Well, here's another great legend. Zeus and Hera were romancing in the garden, and they were so happy that the ground just burst open with beautiful crocus. Well, you have a great time making your crocus.